Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spinner Rack, and we also have
Calvin Ellis, ready to rock.
now we're here doing a movie review of a movie that you all should have seen already. It's hot off the presses, Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, or as it originally was known, of just The Empire Strikes Back. Before it was known as a big trilogy or whatever it is, it's considered of 9 films. It was the sequel to Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, right? Let me hand this off to Cal because he wanted to do this. So give us your intro and I'll add my intro to my initial feelings going into it as a kid. So you hit it off first.
Well, The Empire Strikes Back was actually the first Star Wars movie I ever saw. I didn't get to see Star Wars, even though I knew about it, and all everybody had seen it. A friend of mine had all the toys, so I was definitely aware of it, but didn't really understand the story too much. I wouldn't see Star Wars until sometime after I saw The Empire Strikes Back. And for me, as a kid, I'm watching the movie. I still have like most kids, most people, a very a very general understanding of how these things are supposed to work. It's the good guys versus the bad guys, and the good guys are supposed to triumph in the end. And The Empire Strikes Back was not that sort of film. Obviously, for because it's like the middle film in a trilogy and such. So we had to it left a lot of stuff hanging, and of course you want to come back and see it later, but it really challenged, even at that young age, it really challenged how, you could approach that type of storyline, how, you could effectively engage viewers in terms of a story. And the biggest criticism I've ever had with The Empire Strikes Back is how they were never able to replicate that type of writing cohesivity ever again, rather the cohesiveness that they had of that film. I was watching it again the other night and I was just taken by, man, this just works from start to finish. From start to finish, you're engaged with this. They were never able, I mean, Star Wars, I think, is different because that's the initial film and there's the novelty of things going on and it's very fresh and it's new and, hadn't been done before, a lot of those things. But The Empire Strikes Back is just a solid story. You could have placed that as a Western. You could have placed that as a gangster film. It would have worked in any type. It would have worked with any subgenre of type of film. So, yeah.
Well, when I was a kid, I saw my family took me to see Star Wars. We did a whole bunch of those blockbusters like History of the World, what else the things that we see. And so we saw a bunch of those things that were big movie things to go to after Jaws, and Star Wars was one of them. So when I think we were telling my father it, we would just a whole bunch of as kids being little kids, it was just like Obi-Wan, who's Ben, and Luke, and this is just a whole bunch of things where he couldn't make any sense of. And I think when he saw that, he wasn't too jazzed with Star Wars. But then he took us to see The Empire Strikes Back. That's when we saw it with my father, and he really liked The Empire Strikes Back, and we did, of course. But at the same time, when I saw it as a kid, it was a shocker to end on a cliffhanger, to have a romantic triangle going on at the same time. Now, to get to the critique of it, that's going to be a different issue. But as far as the love triangle, the split of the characters, and then the cliffhanger, this is where the movie works perfectly, and you don't really care about some of the other stuff that's going on or any connection to the stuff from the first movie. You're just in a Hollywood movie, and they've upped the ante. They've done a lot of stuff different from what it was before, but this time you're just like, it doesn't matter. It's just so much fun starting in there, meeting Luke. They're selling us on Han even more in this one, even though he's still kind of a rogue. But then as it goes along, there's this romance where we're like, as a kid, we're like, oh, I was like, no, Luke, Luke needs to be with Leia. What is Han doing? This is like your best friend. And then when the cliffhanger comes, when they, they get them, it's all a setup, and they have the Doctor Doom scene where Darth Vader takes them to dinner because it's like straight out of the Fantastic Four. They like it takes them to dinner and they can't do anything like Doctor Doom's inhibitor ray. At this point, we're at the point where we're like, I think I was supposed to hate Han, but then we lose him in the cliffhanger, and we're like, it sells me on the romance now. And they even had the scene where Leia says, I love you, and he says, I know, and it's like, it totally shifts you. Then we see Luke running by, and you're like, and Luke is a trap. It's like, can things get any worse? Because we already know what happened to Han, and then it's just like, oh no, this is what we came here for a lightsaber battle, and things aren't going well with this one too. So, and then of course the big thing. So as a kid, when I got to the end of Empire Strikes Back, I didn't necessarily buy into the, Luke being Darth Vader's son, that sort of thing. I was like, he's a villain. He's obviously lying, and this, that, and the other. It was kind of tough going into the Return of the Jedi, where they kind of just said Luke had accepted it. And I said, I needed to see some of that. I needed him to really go through it. And that's where some of the plot stuff goes off. But as far as a movie, like a Hollywood movie, there's no need to get into it. It's just fun. You can go to the other one and say, oh, what's the name? Obi-Wan kind of shifted his head and that meant he was lying. It's just a movie. They go a different way. They do things for the maximum effect. And Empire Strikes Back has the maximum effects and leaves you wanting more at the end. So we'll get more into critiquing, but that's my overall, especially as a kid going into it and just chomping at the bit to see another Star Wars. An idea like saying, oh, there's going to be some more. But at the same time, when I went back to school, none of my friends in whatever grade was that, I guess what was that be? I guess that'd be the 5th or 6th grade for me. None of them wanted to play Star Wars. None of them. There was no make-believe in my grade. It was like make-believe was done. Like I could play make-believe on my block, usually with my friend Xavier and sometimes Dennis. I can't remember playing because Dennis was more with my brother at that stage, but Xavier and we would play make-believe from time to time and or fight, just play fight in general. So, but in school, no make-believe Star Wars stuff. None of that. They were like, my closest friends said, no. I was like, what? Like, I was like, I'm looking at them like, you're a kid. Like, you're supposed to be liking it like me. But anyway, that's my overview of the whole thing.
What again? Because I didn't see Star Wars, so this is my introduction to the whole Star Wars universe. And the one thing that I noted was I wanted to see. Well, I didn't even know there was going to be another movie. Okay, I didn't know anything about. I wasn't reading anything like Variety or any of those magazines, and I wasn't very plugged in. And these are definitely not the days of the internet. So, I didn't know there was going to be another movie. So for me, effectively, the story ended right there. That was it.
They sort of hang out together at the end and just look to the sky.
Yeah, they're just looking out onto space, and it ends like and I was like, that's, and for me it was like I was like, again, I was watching this, I was like, wait a minute, they lost?
Yeah.
I was like, they lost? I was like, the heroes aren't supposed to lose. They're supposed to find some way to turn this out in the end. And I was like, man, these guys I was like, they lost? And I was like, what about Han? I felt the same way there was this kid who went to, I'm seeing Infinity War. And there's this kid coming out of Infinity War, and I guess he's really upset because he doesn't realize there's going to be another movie. So, Spider-Man's dead, and he's like, this movie was so stupid. They killed Spider-Man. And that's how I felt coming out of it. I was like, you got to be kidding me. No, we got to get back. There must be some more film. This can't be the end. And the other thing, when I did find out there was something, when I eventually found out, how I found out was through the comics, that something was going to happen. Because I was reading the comics, and in the comics, it was Lando and Chewie, and they're flying around trying to, like, they would have like this sub-adventure that would go on from like, not every comic, but, here and there, and it was the search for Han. So that's what they were doing. So I'm thinking, okay, there's a search for Han. Then I found this is going to be another movie. And I'm like, oh, great. So they're probably going to be the search for Han. And I was so interested in seeing the follow-up movie, which was Revenge of the Jedi. And then
Yeah.
the title changed to,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
it was then was changed to Return of the Jedi. I was so keen to see that. I still didn't want to see Star Wars. You know, I had no interest. I didn't see Star Wars until after I saw Return of the Jedi. That's how that went. And it, you know, again, when I did see it, I was like, wow, that really worked. That was great. You know, that was so much, you know, that was so much fun. So that was, you know, that worked, you know, that worked a lot at the end of the day. But, you know, just, man, in terms of the overall, again, in terms of the overall experience, it's from a writing standpoint, to just, these guys are beset from the very beginning of this film. These guys are just beset with problems. Okay? And these are problems that are not necessarily insurmountable, but they just keep coming. You know, Luke gets smacked off the tauntaun. You know, is he gonna die? Then is Han gonna die? Oh no, the Empire's there. The Empire's there. Everybody, you know, we just got all the group together. Now the group gets split up. Luke's over here, you know, fighting, you know, with some little midget who oh, what, the little midget is actually the Jedi master. Okay, great. Han's got the Empire, and he's like, how many tricks can he keep pulling out of his sleeve in order to get him? And then the bounty hunters come in, and Boba Fett, who has to be the most one next to Vader, he's probably the most popular figure out of Star Wars, and did so little. But that was a testament to how good Han was, because Han kept pulling all this stuff and all these rabbits out of it. That when he finally got caught by Boba Fett just catching him was enough to make Boba Fett just like, oh, he must be really good if he caught Han. You know, Han was coming up with all of this stuff, and then Han getting tortured, like you already said, Luke, you know, showing up, and then that fight between Vader and Luke was, you know, even as a kid, I was like, oh man, he's gonna lose this fight. He has no chance. He's, you know, going at Vader, and Vader's literally like blocking it with one hand and effortlessly doing all this stuff. And then, you know, at one point, I think the last, it's like three rounds, if you will, in that fight with, you know, Vader and Luke. And like the first one just shows you like, okay, you know, he's got no chance. He may be able to stay in the game, but he's got no chance. Eventually, Vader's going to win this. And then I remember the last part, the last round, like just Vader was like, look, enough of this. You know, he's just smashing everything, hitting him, bang, and then finally just, you know, lops off his hand. And I was just like, oh, you know, all the way up to the point where they finally got away, and, you know, Millennium Falcon finally gets the tune-up that it needs, and, you know, they can hit light speed. I thought Vader was going to kill the last general, but I guess he was kind of like, hey, you know what? He was just like, look, what are you going to do, right? These guys just got lucky, right? So I guess you can get lucky too at the end of the day. You know, that's how that worked. But it's, you know, the pacing, you know, it never lets up. You know, as a film, The Empire Strikes Back, it just never lets up. I haven't seen it in a long time, and I sat down to watch it the other day. I said I'm going to watch all of them. And I'm going to watch Star Wars, then I'm going to watch The Empire Strikes Back. And I said, yeah, well, maybe I'll get to Star Wars a little bit later. Let's start with The Empire. Let's start with The Empire Strikes Back, where the Star Wars is just like this great feel-good movie. You know, it's the, you know, kid, and, you know, it's like a Bill Dungsroman for Luke Skywalker, and, he's, you know, learning the ropes and so on and so forth. And again, that's a perfect one-shot film, where if they had ended there and they never had another film after it, yeah, you got a complete story right over there. You can always wonder what's going to happen to Luke and so on and so forth, but you got to have a complete film right there. But that's a standard, good versus evil, good takes the movie at the end of the day, so on and so forth. The fact that they were able to continue on with a story that was much more complex, much more compelling than that initial one, and it goes with the whole growth cycle of Luke as well. When he's like the whiny, the whiny kid, off and go adventure and so on and so forth, to the developing hero, and then finally he's fully matured by he's fully matured, if you will, by the Return of the Jedi. But that film, I look it over, and I always look for points of weakness in it. And the only point of weakness I ever had with The Empire Strikes Back was that it wasn't longer.
Say that again. What was your point of weakness?
The only point of weakness I had with The Empire Strikes Back ever was that it wasn't longer. Okay, that was the only point of weakness I ever had with it. And even then, I can't say I don't know what they chopped and left on the table. I've never seen any outtakes or any extra film, even when they've done stuff like when they did Star Wars, they had, they added some film, some stuff that had been cut out, like Han talking the Jabba the Hutt, that sort of stuff, and they put those bits in. But with Empire Strikes Back, it didn't really add too much to it. I mean, they did some recoloring and added some different backgrounds or something of that nature, but I didn't get much more of that. The other thing that I also got with The Empire Strikes Back, did you ever hear that skit Richard Pryor did about Star Wars?
Not outside of him being on what's the name on SNL. What was that?
I forget which one it was. It might have been Live on the Sunset Strip or something.
Mm-hmm.
But the comment that he made, he was like, "Wow, space is a scary place." He was like, "There are no black people out there." He was like, "Wow, you go all the way, to a different galaxy, and there's just no black people." So I never got that because Empire Strikes Back is the film that I get entered with. Is the film that I entered with, and in that film you see Lando Calrissian. I think there's one other guy in there who's black as well. But you get Lando Calrissian, and Lando being Billy D. Williams, he's introduced in the last act, if you will. Okay, so it's hard for me to say that he has a major role in the film, but he does have a prominent role in the film at the end of the day. So when the criticism that Richard Pryor brought, which I would hear afterwards, was even funnier at that point, because now I'm like, oh, okay, that's how he got in the film in the first place. And then, if Richard Pryor hadn't said anything, I guess these guys would have been like, oh, everybody's cool.
Yeah, the closest is the voice of James Earl Jones, and then that still didn't help in its the having a black person on screen. But the thing is ultimately when you're watching a movie, what is the effect what do you feel while you're there? And that's the same thing when I went back to see Star Wars when they re-released it, like, I don't know, like, was it like 2000 or 1999 or whatever it was?
Did you see all of them or just
No, I just saw the first. I just saw Star Wars. I was thinking about trying to see them again in the theater, and I was there, and that's the same sort of fear when I was hearing they were going to do the prequels, because some things just don't age well, right? You can't escape it, despite how they revolutionize sci-fi and film in general. When I went in, I was like, that's the fear of the prequels. Is like, you know what? They can just sit back, get the top writers, pick and choose the best things, and make a film out of it. Like that, like being Lucas, you could just have all the top guys say yes, no, yes, like be Madeline Kahn in the history of the world. Yeah, no, no, yes, no, no, yes, and then put it all together. But then watching the Star Wars, whether I don't think obviously the Jabba scene didn't really add much, but you could see the core of it with the three characters, obviously all of the core cast, and especially the three core characters in Luke, Leia, and Han. But then there's one part where the audience laughed, is when Obi-Wan starts talking to Luke and the audience cracks up. And I said, I don't remember it's a possibility the audience reacted the same way back in the day too, but it doesn't hurt the film that they're reacting to. They're laughing when Luke used the Force, and it's like it gets a laugh from the audience. But then when you get the payoff at the end, it's like, wow. And then when you see them get the award at the end, it's like, yeah, it was all worth it. So when you get to the second film, that's what I'm talking about, mood. When you get to the second film, everything, the ante is just upped. It's like now the empire is a true empire. They got the money to do an empire, whereas like we look like, as you were saying, it looked like the stronghold was taken out and they'll just wither away in the galaxy and be okay. No. Now, like, whereas what is it? What do they call it? It's like a black hand. What is that thing they say? He's like the guy. He's like the emperor's does his dirty work. He's actually now like a big deal. He's not just some old thing from yesteryear. He's like, no, Lord Vader is the big deal out here. He's not playing around. So it's like, okay, we get into then the Force. They got money to do stuff with the Force. that's where, instead of him just saying, hey, both of them using the force very slightly and like that sort of thing. Now they're just tossing things around, doing different, like that sort of thing, lifting up ships. There's mind over matter stuff. So all this stuff is up in the ante. And then even well, I guess but the relationship is still the same. You could see, and I hadn't remembered looking at Star Wars and seeing that Han, I didn't understand that Han was kind of flirting with Leia in the first film, because it went over my head when Luke said, yes, hey, when Han says, you think a princess could get with me? And Luke says, no, not a chance. I didn't get that Han had some interest there. So when I watched it, it was kind of like, where is this? Like Leia kissed Luke, that's it. No, that's not. It's gonna keep going. So, and then like the other fear is what would happen to their friendship. So it's like, as a kid, I wouldn't look at any of that stuff. But then as you go along, the mood still is like, you just stuck in this movie because it's just so much interest. And especially when he goes to the Dagobah and he's like, runs into Yoda and he sees these things and it's like, it's just adding the intrigue and it's like, what is he gonna go through in this thing? But then I think the Millennium Falcon also goes through arc because it's still struggling throughout the film, like the first one. And then when they get to with Billy D and the sky system, it's like, hey, this is the fastest ship on the planet. And it's like they've been taking shots at the Millennium Falcon all this time, and at this point, for the rest of the time, that thing is never gonna putt anymore. It's just the perfect ship now, just there to get them and go. Where the Millennium Falcon had its own character. It was kind of, it would run out of steam and fall apart and stuff like that, and then it would come through in the clutch.
They didn't take care of it.
But after one,
No, see, because I never saw it in the first film. So again, this is probably gonna be, I'm really like a skipping record with this whole thing, but I didn't see it in the first film, so I had no idea how fast it was, or Luke calls it a hunk of junk. When I first see the Millennium Falcon, I think it's so cool because my first introduction to it is they're trying to escape Vader and the stormtroopers, and the gun comes down, shoots those guys out, and it takes off. And it's not like a regular ship because of the size, but that whole back, the way that the rear of the ship is just lit up like this giant backlight. I just always thought that was so cool. It was just like this really cool effect at the end of the day. And then every time I see it, I'm saying, okay, the Millennium Falcon is trying to get away from the destroyers, and then those TIE fighters are coming there. They're trying to get him. He's getting rid of one, and then it makes that really cool move. There's that narrow, and it just turns to its side. And the only way, I was like, man, no other ship but the Millennium Falcon could have done that. Look at the design. It's perfect. And it's perfect. Look how it just squeezed right through at the end of the day. It just looked so cool to me. Well, and then when I'm here later on, it's like, oh, it's junk. I just thought, no, they never, I remember they were trying to work on some stuff and they just never fixed it. Well, then I go back to the first movie and I'm realizing, oh, they just never, this dude is like, he doesn't take care of the ship. He doesn't take care of the ship. Well, the Millennium Falcon is the fastest ship, but this guy's always living hand to mouth at the end of the day. He owes money. So of course he's not taking care of the ship.
Well, don't even think about that's something that's going. It's just that it was a constant point in the plot. Whereas the point of when Lucas has the scene where we first see the Millennium Falcon, it's like you're just like, look at it and you're like, wow, what? And then it's good writing that Luke comes in and says, what a hunk of junk. Because the audience is just like, and you can always, whenever you see it, and that happened the same effect watching it. I don't remember as a kid that point, but watching it again, I had forgotten that Luke had said that when he comes in to see the ship that he's been selling them on, that whole bit where he's like, this is the fastest ship and all that. And then Luke is like, he's saying what the reality is, but it's only the setup that when they need some sort of thing to sort of add some tension, they set up this thing with the ship. And I'm saying that sort of tension, it's not needed when they escape, obviously. But when you get to the next film, you're like saying, okay, this is gonna have no. It's just like it's just gonna go. It's just going and go. So it's just like a little plot bit and character that the ship had that made it a character in the film that was kind of just sort of tossed away. No one really goes too crazy about that, but this is just saying, as far as storytelling, some of the bits that we kind of just sort of look past because we're just so far in this movie. And that's what a good sequel can do. Because I know everyone says, this is better than the first, that sort of thing. I'm not going that far. I'm saying that it's so powerful a film that you don't even care that, hey, they've upped the ante, they've changed things, the force works differently. Like, no, you're just in there, and the storytelling is so strong. You're just like, wow, when you get to the end, it's still that same sort of effect. And something that I think when they should have done when they were doing the new ones to really sort of capture that interaction, because that interact you can see a little of that in the Mandalorian, but that's with the characters not understanding each other. In some of this second season, you can see more of them getting to some of that type of writing. But the writing you see in Star Wars is the same writing you see in the cast and selects, which is strong, which is like all this wacky dialogue and these actors who are outside of Harrison Ford, who had a career, you could see he was going to have a career. But these two sort of, no, they're at that point, they're not big people, Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, they're not big, they're not going to be big. We don't know what they're going to be. And they're selling you these lines with their regular clothes on. So when people kind of go at the writing and stuff like that, it's as far as how you sell that stuff. Because, I mean, it's space stuff. It's gonna be wacky. It's gonna be wacky, and the fact that they sold you on it, you can see in the prequels, these guys could care less about what they were saying, And even though it was a little more talking about like Congress and all this other stuff and head of state, really that emotion that they were given was really powerful. And then in this one, it's even more because they look like when they're in the ice area, they look like they're in bad shape. After Luke gets messed up and he's in the Steranko tank, and just like these guys are they up the ante on some things, but then it's like the rebels are really rebels. They're really, the princess doesn't look like she's a princess of much now. Like they're really on their heels right now. So
yeah, they did a good job with it. Yeah,
yeah.
well, if like I was taught when I was taught, like I was taught in school, when it comes to titles are supposed to be thematic. This was The Empire Strikes Back, and The Empire Struck. They were like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
it was like you got lucky the first time. You got lucky the first time. Now we're coming out. Okay, why don't we just put a little pressure on you? And he was like, wow, these guys are everywhere. There's nowhere you can go where you can be safe. Oh, we're gonna go over here, hang out with Lando and Bespin. Nope, Empire got there first. You got the bounty hunters. Everybody's after you. But that was it definitely helped to fill out their world, because it also explained. I mean, I thought Star Wars did a good job. The whole, David and David Goliath type of thing, if you will. But Empire Strikes Back really lets you have an understanding of what these guys were up against and why that initial win in Star Wars is such a big deal, because these guys like really have it over them. They're like, okay, this is the rebel base, and they're like, no, you don't have no rebel base. When these guys find you, what do they got to do? We got to get out of here. We can't contend with these guys at the end of the day. And so that they did a good job. Yeah, they did a very good job of unveiling that, us getting a better understanding of the odds that the rebels are up against, and that they really are rebels. The best you can do is hide out for a little bit, make some hits there, here and there, try to do this, try to do that, and try to take it to the Empire. But this is like, I mean, literally, the Death Star was a big deal, but everything else was like them kicking at their, like at the ankles of a giant. So you get that, you pardon me, you get a stronger sense of that in the Empire Strikes Back. I don't know, the love thing I never really got too much of. I just pretty much felt that Leia likes Han, and she was just being, a girl about it.
I mean, if you watched the ultimately, because it's more Luke's movie. If you're watching Star Wars, you saw that first. But he's the kind of guy we're sort of invested in. And then I think over the years, with Harrison Ford becoming as big as he is, it's been like, and Hollywood picking Harrison Ford out of there, and making Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher work for their careers. It's kind of been like you keep going back and you're like, oh look, Han shoots Greedo, that sort of stuff. So you kind of really highlight the Han stuff. But I think going in there, Luke came out the not the star of it, because obviously, but he was a big part. So when you see it, it's like, okay, it's Luke and what's the name? I think it was Leia. It gives a kiss for good luck. So as a kid, you're kind of connecting to that sort of
It
thing.
was a kiss on the cheek.
But it's not when you're a kid. It don't matter. When you're like 6 or 7 or however old I was when I saw it. It was like, oh wow, here's the princess, and then this you're following Luke throughout the thing. And yeah, obviously people went to Han too, but they like it's one of those things where you're like, if you're following it, you can have your pick of who you want. It'll be like a fight between, oh, okay, I like Luke, and then the friendship when you see in the friendship in the first one, whereas there's all this, you don't necessarily initially see it as brothers when they're fighting in the Millennium Falcon in the first movie. But when Luke has got all of his friends that I guess when he first did all his tryout stuff, and he's talking with them, and it's like, oh wow, these are guys more his speed. And he cuts, and he's like, Han, where are you going? No, this is his real friend, it's Han. Like, hey, Han, you can't go. So you're just gonna leave, and it's just like, all right, I'll go back to these normal guys. But then when you get to that big end, so yeah, I think he kind of. But I think early on, it wasn't sold on who she was gonna be with. And I was more sold with him being with Luke, and then even the kiss earlier in the Empire. It was just like, oh, it's sold. Oh no, it's not sold. Here we go. Romantic trial. What was Luke gonna feel? Wait, we lost Han. It's like, what are they doing? And that's a very interesting way to have this looming triangle. I think a lot of people kind of shy away from that now. They kind of turned it into like, oh, how could this happen? Especially with kids, you kind of struggle with that, fighting over some girl or something like that. So it's just interesting to be able to see that. No one really wants to do that anymore. And it's a deal breaker, like instead of this sort of thing when it's early in the part where nothing is settled, it can be fun.
Nobody wants to do it anymore because people are too soft and sensitive. Nobody wants to be the loser in the love triangle. That's why they don't want to do it anymore. It's okay if you have a love triangle, one of the people in the love triangle is a jerk. Then you're like, you don't, that's how he is. But that serves you right. But if both people are pretty much, deserving of, being the winner at the end of the day, somebody's got to lose. And so nobody can deal with that situation. So we don't do that anymore. But I remember there's this opening scene in The Empire Strikes Back where I think Han comes in after he comes off patrol, and Leia just gives him this look. Okay, it's if you get the chance to go back and look at it, she just gives him this look, and the look says it all. Okay, he comes in, she's looking at him, and I was like, oh, okay, she's like really into him. And then, later on, you get Luke's the kiss, but I just figured, she's just being a girl about the whole thing. He's like, he did the one thing that I think a lot of chicks don't like. He finally read her mind on something that she was trying to keep secret. But it was transparent at the end of the day. He's like, oh, I'm going to show you how much you know. I'm going to go over here and kiss him. But Han never backed down off the whole thing. He's like, nah, I know you're into me. I know that didn't mean anything. I know you're just trying to get a rise out of me. And you did. You got a rise out of me. So, okay, that's great. So what are we going to do now? And then, the whole thing later on where he's like, what is it? They're close. And he's like, oh, you're holding me, this, that, and the other, you're blah, blah, blah. He's like, you're trembling and this, that, and the other. I was like, yeah, it's about him.
Well, this whole subplot, now that I'm looking at it and thinking about it again, it's almost totally ripped off by the X-Men. like in the classic X-Men with Jean and Wolverine.
That
But
was always such straight malarkey.
the whole bit of the
Without getting too much into the X-Men, I don't want to. That'll make this a 3-hour show.
well, I just want to bring up the fact that it's just something I hadn't really noticed, because I think ultimately with the X-Men, I think the women in the art in the Marvel office liked the characters that were hairy. They liked the Beast, they liked Wolverine, and they liked Nightcrawler. Oh, that's how Nightcrawler became furry, because hearing that this, that, and the other, they said, "Oh yeah, Nightcrawler is furry too." So, oh yeah, that's cool too. So the girls are kind of saying the characters they liked, and then they're saying, "Oh, Beast, give him 3 main girls." Nightcrawler the same, and he's like, "Hey, the good, they like Wolverine." So it's like, but that whole chat, that whole classic X-Men of him kind of reading her, that's about using his senses and stuff, and just like, whereas what's the name of going over and regular, I mean, saying it's the same thing, but it's just I don't know, it's one of those things where you just have just a really fun, exciting movie with a couple of decent twists in there, and even the thing of the filmmaking of you having these AT-ATs where you have all the visual dogfight, but having these AT-ATs go so slowly and just being stalked, even though they do the rope around, the bigger they harder they fall. That stalking part of the AT-ATs and them being so large really gave you some a strong, emotional draw when you're worrying about the heroes and the rebels in general. So it's like this sort of thing of filmmaking, just getting to that raw bit of what they're trying to do. The like the rebels in this cubby hole in these caves, and it's cold, and the next thing you got these AT-ATs coming. It's like, oh god, they're really in trouble.
And actually, it works very well because they're machines. They're like they're three different things at the end of the day. They're machines, they're monsters, okay, and they're like animals. It's like when you would see that old footage of like the guys riding the elephants in the battle and they're just totally dispersing everything. That's what the AT-ATs did at the end of the day. They encompassed all of that, but it also showed you like how it's like, what do you guys have against these things? These guys are coming at you with these large lumbering things that are not going to be stopped. They're like the Oliphants in Lord of the Rings. They're not going to be stopped. Okay, rebels, you go. What do you guys have? Oh, we're going to use those speeders. Like, what? You got to come over here and you got to trip these things in order. Like, and even as a kid, when I was watching initially, I'm like, yeah, this is good. They're taking them down. They're taking them down. I'm like, wait a minute. You never. The guy who's talking to Vader, he's like, no, don't worry about it. We're going to take that shield down. Don't worry. We're going to take that down in moments. And I'm like, no, they're going to tie him. I was like, no, they have no chance. They have no hope. This whole thing is just delaying time so they can try to get as many people out of there as possible. You know, that was the power of the Empire. The AT-ATs, that was the Empire. You can do whatever you like, but slowly, surely, these guys are going to come. They're just going to take you down. They're just too powerful. And they did it. They did it very well. I remember how much I wanted that AT-AT toy when I was a kid, but yeah, Dad was like, "No, you need warm trousers."
No, my cousin had the ad. He had he had a ton of Star Wars action figures. I think I had about, I had more of the earlier ones, not too many of the Empire Strikes Back. And I think by Return, I was kind of out of the toy thing. Or maybe there was some other toys I was getting, but I didn't initially go out for more Star Wars toys. Well, my cousin always had all those. He had obviously the Alien and Godzilla. So when we visit him, we get to play with that stuff there. So, but the other thing is that there's another interesting thing in this story. It's the last bit I have is the reveal of how much of what Vader looks like. The brief glimpse of what Vader looks like, and it was hinted. I think he said it in I think in the Rolling Stone article where it's saying, well, I think I read that one where where Obi-Wan tossing Vader into this volcano, and what's left is what we see, and it's giving you a glimpse of that talk of what happened before between Obi-Wan and Vader, and you get a little bit of that. I think in Jedi, they kind of chickened out to say, okay, he's just a bald guy. He's not something where his face would be barely there because of that breathing, that sort of thing. So and he kind of, and this is giving you the other Doctor Doom effect of saying how much of his face is actually left here. What is left of this guy. So, but he's still, even showing this moment of weakness, this guy is the most powerful thing we've seen in this whole series. Like, he's worse in this movie. So, but cool. It was a cool, very cool scene.
A lot of it's, well, working backwards, a lot of the stuff that happens when you find out the reveal of Luke Skywalker's parentage, Vader being his father, some of the scenes, well, the kiss with Leia was, well, that's Jedi, but the scene where he has with the Emperor, where the Emperor's telling him, like, yeah, whoever this kid is, he's definitely the son of Anakin Skywalker. He's like, yeah. And then I'm trying to read, it's like, he's actually trying to save his son, or, he's like, look, he's going to really he's really going to kill his son if that doesn't happen. But the build up, the build up, the fight, something I really was interested in seeing as a kid. And then when I get there to see, oh wow, he's got no hope, and I'm thinking he's gonna pull out one of those hero things where, he'll find some clever way to defeat Vader, like Vader will charge or something, or he'll see like some button, press the button, and that'll get rid of Vader. And it was like, no, you're gonna lose. That's what's gonna happen. Okay, this whole thing, like when Leia was like, it's a trap, like, yes. This is a trap. You're not getting out. There's only one or two ways that you're actually going to get out of here. But even before I wanted to get into that whole thing with Han being captured, thrown in the carbonite, and then Lando being introduced to us as the biggest traitor.
Yeah.
All of that at the end of the day was just really well done. You meet Lando. And Lando first comes over here like he's angry with Han. He's like, oh, no, I'm just kidding. He's like, oh, no, there's something fishy about this dude. And you find out exactly what it is. And then, of course, we get the redeeming quality. We're like, look, I was just trying to do this to save Bespin, but now the deal is getting bad, and I got to get this taken over. He's like, nah, man, this wasn't it. I'm going to go tap onto this guy over here and find some way out. And Chewie's getting ready to, choke him out. He's like, no, there's no way to save Han. We can go do it. But, of course, they get there too late. But all of that, all of that really well done, where you get these characters who come in and you can't quite peg them at first. Mm-hmm. Lando. I thought I would have loved to have seen him have more time, to see what you could really do with the character. I've always thought Lando was pretty much I don't want to say he was a cipher at the end of the day, but he's introduced so late in the story of Empire Strikes Back. And then he's introduced so late in the whole Star Wars story. He's the last of the original characters introduced, and we don't get a lot of time with him with any of the other characters. He doesn't get a lot of time with Luke or Leia or anybody else at the end of the day. So I would have liked to have seen a little bit more time with him in Empire Strikes Back. But again, I was looking, this was, the way he's introduced, and you're like, okay, I have no idea. You don't know what this guy's getting ready to do. And then the next thing you know, okay, they're friends. And then the next thing you know, he's setting them up at the whole Godfather dinner. And then the next thing you know, okay, he's doing this, and, he's not, this is supposed to be happening. It looks like he's trying to do all this, maybe there's some redemption quality. Before you know it, I thought the moment where he officially became a part of the gang, they're on the Millennium Falcon. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, I had my men. They fixed the ship. Everything's good. And then he's like right there. And they're like, okay, ready, jump to light speed, punch Chewie. And he's like, what do you mean it's not my fault? And it's the same thing Han was saying earlier in the film. He's like, yeah, this ship is just a piece of work. You got to keep going with it. And then finally, R2-D2, who's the most effective. That is the most effective character in the series. R2-D2 at the end of the day. Where R2-D2 finally, R2-D2 finally gets everything together, and and they're gone. And then he buddies up with Chewie, and they're gonna go looking for Han. But I would have liked to have seen. I mean, I'm happy for what was there. It definitely rounds out the team, gives it a nice even number as opposed to conflict. But would have definitely liked to have seen some more time. but that I always thought the bigger, for me, the biggest moment in the film is that fight with Vader. The just the film starts with like just really big odds. They're not insurmountable, but you're really, I mean, you're really going to have to run a lot faster in order to win the race in this film. This will not be what you got in the first film, where everything just kind of fell your way, and not necessarily luck, but the force was definitely with you in that first film. Here, you're really going to have to work a lot harder. And that first, that fight, was just, that was the punctuation on it, where you guys are just outmatched, outgunned, outclassed, outwitted, outdone. The fight goes down, and Vader says he's impressed and so on and so forth. And you're like, okay, but the whole thing is just a trap. He's just wearing him down. He's just wearing him down at the end of the day. He's like, I could have ended this in the first round. I was trying to get you in the carbonate so I could just take you out that way. That didn't work. Okay, now I've got you over here. I'm going to start throwing some stuff at you, just wear you down that way. Okay. And then with the last one, it's like, look, enough of this. You can't fight if you don't have a hand. I'm just going to take the hand. That's it. And the only thing Luke can do, like in desperation, is just to fall and just wait there. Just wait there to see, hey, what's going to happen. They're going to go retrieve him. It's just so bloody well done.
Well, the only thing you touched on it just a second ago about the Luke and Vader. Some of the bits that I think they hit the first couple of drafts, or first drafts, were done by Leah Brackett, and it said I can't find it in print, but it said that Lucas said that bit of Luke, Luke being Vader's son was kind of thrown in one of the things, and that sort of stuck. So you hear who's it, Lucas talk about Obi-Wan throwing Vader into into a volcano, and then there's this bit that's so ironclad in the story, which is Luke being Vader's son, being Anakin Skywalker being Vader, the one and the same, and this name is just sort of a dark was a Sith sort of name instead of being Vader's actual name. So where he said, "Hey, I had a young pupil named Darth Vader." That's what he says. But then Alec Guinness adds so much stuff to his history, giving so much weight to it, saying, and his moves and whatnot, talking about the father, of not wanting to talk about the father. Every time you look at it, it feels like it's almost natural that when they go to the next one, it's like, oh, there was some secret that he was keeping, rather than saying, hey, I know your father died, but we kind of need you to join the rebellion. And that's what he's kind of going for. But then it easily moved over into Vader being Anakin Skywalker and being this thing that's almost, you can't even, and many people have argued that this was always a part of the thing. This is the part of the 9. I mean, I've argued with people when it was originally 9 films and it was all written out and all done. And then, we found, I wrote 6 of them. And it's like that sort of thing. But it's like, it was a fun myth at one point where it was just like, this thing, if it is developed as Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back and even Return of the Jedi, if we get anything close to what we got in those films, the first 3 will be even better, and then the last 3 will be even better. And that sort of thing, rather than sort of springboards and bits that they had that, I mean, you could always flesh out and make better, that sort of thing. It just kind of, I don't know, but it's that strength of Alec Guinness's acting really allowed them to really play with the, who was Anakin Skywalker, and they did it to classic effect. So.
Well, now that you say it, because we only get those instances with, unfortunately, in the second film, we don't really get a lot of Alec Guinness.
Yeah, he's just sort of he comes in even when they have the whole stuff with Yoda. Like they let Yoda's like, I want to find out what this kid's about. He doesn't say that, but it isn't until later where Yoda's talking to Obi-Wan and just like, Why didn't they just tell him? No, because it's a good point. It's a good storytelling bit for Yoda trying to test him as a Jedi. But as a kid, it was just like, just Obi-Wan, just tell him what he looks like. Just give him don't just say Yoda, the great master. And he's kind of putting Luke through this test. So as a kid, there's no time. But for Yoda, obviously, there's some things, and they're trying to explain that later, saying how late this training is and how this deals with Anakin and all that other stuff, which none of us really care about. All we want to see is people trained. That's all we care about. We don't care if they might get turned to the dark side and all that other stuff. We train them when they're like 18 or like 21 or something like that. We just want them trained and using a lightsaber.
Well, knowing what we know of Anakin Skywalker now, yeah. If I'm Yoda, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to train this one. He's like, look what happened with his father. That didn't work out too well for us. I'm over here living in a bloody swamp, you know? That wasn't necessarily the best move.
Yeah.
And Luke doesn't do us any favors. You know, Luke is impatient.
Yeah, I mean, well, he got his friends to worry about, and then, of course, and that leads to the great part of the story that he runs off. Well, there's not much he can do because when he gets there, he's getting there just minutes before everything's going down, and it's all been set up for him to fail. So, there's a lot of good stuff going on in this film, and it's something that I think people will always go back to. And, because I know, I guess in the Star Wars, the biggest struggle, the hardest scene to look at is the droid, the globe droid with the needles, the heroin droid in Star Wars movie. You're like, I don't know what they could do with this scene, but the heroin droid, the heroin globe thing is not, the truth serum, whatever it is. This is really wacky. But and I don't remember much, even though the monster, when they're inside the monster and the Millennium Falcon flies out and almost bites them. Even though you could say that's kind of a thing, but it's still fun. It's still one of those fun moments, so that you can't get up. You don't want to. And it's none of the stuff I really would want to chuck. So that sort of thing. It's just quality stuff. It's just stuff. It's just fun movie.
Gave us that great line to tell chicks later on when they say, I love you, I know.
Yeah, whatever you guys do, don't do that. That's them sitting there and trying to find the right line for the moment. And if you're going into ice, maybe, but when you come out of the ice, what did you say? You say, oh, I'll never say that again. You'll be paying through the nose for that one.
Because he's been after her since the beginning of this film. Mm-hmm. He's like, I already know how you feel. You're over here playing around and such. Like, we got time to move. We got time to play around. I'm over here running away from the Empire, hiding out in the mouths of freaking space beasts. Come on.
I don't know, man. You're asking guys to get in trouble. I'm saying for the public out there, that is not, if you are okay to lose the person that just said that to you, if you got something waiting in the wings, go ahead, by all means say when she says I love you. When you're at your marriage vow, it's like, this, that, and the other, and I love you so much. Hey, I know. Get him out of here. It's not the comeback line. It's not the line to reply with.
If she's a real woman, she'll understand.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, lads. Okay, if she's a real woman, she'll understand. Okay.
She'll understand you for the rest of your life. You'll be bringing that thing up. I know. I know.
That's true. Then I'll do the what is it? The white man can't jump line. Like, hey, I didn't force you to do it.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, you're a grown man. You do what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So wrapping everything up, I suppose. Excellent film. Stands the test of time. This is, if I was teaching film, and definitely if I was teaching writing, this would be one of the things on my syllabus. You have to watch this and understand how this, how this is all put together. We care about the characters. The, the cohesion of the story is great. It moves with such, it moves it moves so fluidly, okay, without any, without any issues whatsoever. It makes sense from start to finish. The dialogue, the characterization, it's just a great film, without a doubt.
Yeah, and I guess lastly to say, last thing, you can also still go out and try to find either the Treasury edition or the comic books, which were drawn by Al Williamson. It's like the greatest, one of the greatest sci-fi comic artists, actually doing a present day. I think he did some of the strips, and it says getting him on it. So if you're going out there and you're not only just watching watching the movie, go out and buy the comic book if you can. Probably get some decent used copies of that because it's just gorgeous stuff in there too. And Spinner Rack out.
Out.
Hold on.
Yeah, let me